Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today you'll be managing a rock band in a fantasy universe, recruiting the most talented and charismatic musicians, holding concerts in the main city, hiring dragons for transport and light shows, while trying to give the best act at the festival. Trollfest is for 3 to 6 players, takes 45 minutes to play, is for ages 14 and up, and published by Trick or Treat Studios. Today we'll be doing a rule school. Well, I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Without further ado, let's get started. Trollfest is a fun and thematic game for 3 to 6 players where you'll be managing a rock band in a fantasy universe. You'll be building up your band of different species and different instrument types. You'll be traveling around the land, going to different cities. You'll be gathering dragon tokens to put on a great light show at the end of the game at the festival. And you'll be putting on concerts. It's great to be the first one there, but you don't want to be the last because no one else wants to hear you. You might even get extra points if the Groundhog is there. Some cities will give you action cards to give you some tactical advantages or even some ways to score points at the end of the game. Other cities might allow you to draft a new band member, but you can only have one band member for each instrument type. Once the tour's over, you'll go to the festival and be scoring points for different skills, energy, and charisma on your different band members, as well as doing different set collection of having maybe just males or only females, or having a diverse species of band members in your band, or maybe putting on the best light show by gathering those dragon tokens throughout the game. So let's see if you have what it takes to draft the best band, adding to that band, and going to the right cities at the right time. To set up, place the board in the middle of the table where everyone can reach it. On the board, you'll notice these types of illustrations. They'll be in 7 different colors. These are where you're going to put the dragon tokens. You'll stack 2 of the corresponding color if you're playing with 3 or 4 players, or you'll stack 3 of each if you're playing with 5 or 6 players. You'll do this for all 7 colors of those dragon tokens. I'm going to be showing you a 4-player game, so I have 2 of those stacked on each of the spots. In this case, since there's 1 left over of each color, I can place those back in the box. We won't need them this game. Next, you'll separate out the starting artist cards into the decks. There's 4 different ones. We have singers, bass, guitar, and drums. You'll shuffle each of these decks independently of each other. Then you'll give each player 1 card from each of these decks face down. That player can look at the cards, but don't show them to anyone else. Below the board, you are going to set up these 3 decks. The seasoned artist cards that look like this, the action cards, and the city cards. Each of these decks you'll shuffle independently. I'll leave them like this for now. Next, each player is going to pick their player color. And they're going to get all the tokens in that color. You're going to get the band meeple, your hometown token, your scoring token, and you're going to get tour tokens. Now you'll only use a certain amount of these depending on the amount of players. If you're playing with 3 players, you'll play with all 14 of these. With 4 players, you'll remove 2 of those, so you'll be playing with 12. And if you're playing with 5 or 6 players, you'll only play with 10 of them. So we're playing with the 4-player game today, so we'll use 12 of them. Any of the ones that are removed can be placed back in the box. On the bottom left of the scoreboard, you'll see a special star icon on the 5 on the scoreboard, and you'll stack the tokens of the players playing there in any order. The object of the game is to have the most points in the end. You'll be gaining points throughout the game by going to locations and putting on concerts, but also at the end of the game. And at the end, you'll be scoring in many different ways as well, like having different attributes like skills, or charisma, or energy, and having the first or second most of those, or even having diversity of the different species in your bands, and other ways of like authenticity, having male only or female only bands, or a classic rock band, or maybe all the same species. So there's many different ways to score in the game. The game goes through 3 main phases. First, you'll be forming your band, then you'll be going on tour, and then finally at the end is the festival where you'll be scoring. In the first phase, band formation, you're going to deal each player 4 seasoned artist cards and 4 action cards. Again, don't show anybody these cards. They're dealt face down. The players can look at them, but don't show them to anyone else. After looking at those 8 cards, you're going to select 1 to place face down in front of you. You're going to take the other 7 cards you did not select and pass them to the player to your left. which means you're going to be getting 7 cards from the player to the right. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to look at these new cards. You're going to select 1 to keep, place it face down in front of you, and pass the rest of the cards to your left. You will keep doing this until you end up receiving 2 cards because you've already selected 6 of them. From here, again, you'll look at them. You'll select 1 to keep, and the one that you don't keep gets discarded face down at the bottom of the respective deck. At this point, you should have exactly 11 cards. Remember, you got dealt 1 of each of the 4 types of the starting artists, and then you drafted 7 more. I happen to have gotten 3 of the season artists and 4 action cards are the ones that I picked. So you should have exactly 11 cards, but the makeup of how many of these and these might be different depending on what you drafted. Next, you're going to look at your artists and you're going to decide which ones you want to keep. Now, a couple of caveats here. First of all, you must have the 4 basic types of instruments, which is the singer, the guitar, the bass, and the drums. You must have one of those in there and exactly 1. But you might have other artists, like we have the piano, we have the saxophone, but notice that this has a guitar and that's a guitar. You can never have 2 band members on the same instrument, so you would need to select 1. So for example, let's say I want to keep this one, then I would discard this one. If you're discarding a starting artist card, remove it from the game. If instead you are getting rid of a season artist card, put it face down at the bottom of the respective deck. However, there is an exception to this. If one of the action cards you kept is the duo action card, you can play it now, place it face up, and this allows you to have a pair of the same artist types. But in this case, let's just say we didn't have that. So this were the band members that we were going to keep. Now you might not know the strategy of which one you want to keep now. If that's the case, that's okay. You can just keep where your cards are right now and watch the rest of this video to learn all the strategies of what you might want to do, and then come back when you're done with the video right before you're getting going and select which ones you'll keep. Next, make up a name for your band, write it down on a piece of paper and put it in front of you, like mine's called the Harmonious Halitosis. And then reveal it at the same time as the other players. And players are going to vote on the best band name, but make sure it's impartial judging. The winner will get 5 points, but they'll also be last in player order. And if it's a tie, have the players all just vote on just the ones that are tied. Now each player always keeps their band face up in front of themselves the whole game. Now the other cards that you drafted, the action cards, they stay in your hand secretly. Next you're going to flip face up 7 of the season artist cards and put them just below the board right next to the deck. This is known as the Rock Springboard. Also make sure all of the starting artist cards that were not used this game or ones that were discarded when players were picking their bands are removed from the game. Now we're going to go to the second phase of the game. This is the main part of the game, and this is known as the tour. The first player is going to flip over the first city card, and we see Deathwind. You will place the Groundhog meeple in that location, and that city card can be discarded to the bottom of that deck face down. On the first turn, starting with the player to the left of the one that had the best band name, they're going to select a starting city, and they will place both their band meeple and their home token on it. You can place it in the same city as someone else, but it's typically not a good idea. You'll do this clockwise. Once everyone's done that, now you'll start to take the normal turns, and a player's turn goes through different steps. First, you'll move, and you'll move along the road to a neighboring city. For example, if I'm right here, I can move to a neighboring city because the road is right there. If you move through a dragon pass, like we just did, and there's a dragon token there, you'll take it assuming you don't already have the token of this color. You'll collect those in front of you because at the end of the game, for having the most different types of those dragon tokens will give you points for having the first or second most of a light show at the end of the game. Now you must stop in the first city you reach, and there's no limit to the number of bands that can be in that same city. For example, there might have been somebody else there. It's okay, you can move there just fine. Now when you get there, normally you're going to add one of your tour tokens. However, there's a couple of times you wouldn't do that. If we already had a tour token here, we would not place another one. Also, if all the other players have a tour token there except you, meaning you're the only player that doesn't have a tour token there, then you also don't place one, which means if you're the last one to get to a city and do a concert there, you're not putting a tour token there. Other than those 2 reasons, you're going to be placing one of your tour tokens. Now, when you do place your tour token, you're going to be scoring some points. First of all, we'll look at the species in this city here. And we'll score as many points for how many of those we have in our band. In this case, we only have 1 right here, so we'd get a point. Also, if you're the first one to put a tour token there like we are now, you'll get 2 additional points. Now the 2 things I just talked about are action on the bottom left of the board 2 points if it's the first concert, 1 point for matching each of the musicians of that type. Now you might do other actions depending if there's extra symbols in this city. For example, this symbol here is known as a market city. Now you notice that this icon looks like the same one on the market city, and that's to help remind you that you'll be able to draw action cards if you're in a city of that type. In fact, you actually get to draw 4 cards off the top of this deck. Now you'll look at these secretly, you'll decide which one to keep, and the 3 that you don't keep, you'll place at the bottom of that deck. Now instead, if you're in a city that has this icon, that's cities with a vivid cultural life. Now if you notice, that icon also matches this, which are from the season artist cards, and that's to remind you that you can either take one artist from the rock springboard that's out here, or one off the top of the deck. Now if you do draw from the top of the deck, you can choose to discard that drawn artist without adding it to your band. You just place it face down at the bottom of the deck. Now if you did take one and you wanted to add it, remember you can only have one of each type, so you'd have to discard the one that you already have. But maybe you add an artist type of one that you don't have yet, and that's great, you just add it. And then you'll replace that taken artist with another card from the top of the deck. So that was just to show you this example. Let's go back to our city, but let's say this was actually the city that had the Groundhog meeple in it. As shown on the bottom of the board, after you've scored for possibly having the first concert and 1 for each of the matching types of that species, you'll also score 5 points if the groundhog is there. You'll also take that Groundhog meeple and place it next to you. On your next turn, you're going to flip a city card and you're going to place that Groundhog meeple in that city. Unless that city already has the maximum number of tour tokens for the player count, and 4 players, there'd be 3 of them, and in that case, you would draw another city card. Keep doing this until you place it in a valid city. So after you've moved, stopped in the city, and put on a concert, and possibly done some other actions, it's then going to be the next player's turn, clockwise. Now we've talked about getting these action cards and drafting them and such, but how do you use them? If they have this logo on them, you'll do them during the tour phase, which is this main part of the game that we're talking about. Like on your turn, you could play this one to play when moving through a tunnel and score as many points as dwarves in your band. Now after playing a card, it's discarded to the bottom of the action deck face down, but you can play as many cards as you like on your turn. There's also some cards that will affect the final scoring during the festival phase. We'll go over that later. Turns will continue like this until you placed your last tour token. All of the players have 1 more turn, and then the tour phase ends. If at the end of the tour phase, you ended with your band meeple in your hometown, you'll score 5 points as denoted on the board. Also, if you placed all of your tour tokens, you'll also get 5 points. Then we're going to go to the 3rd phase, the last phase of the game, which is the festival. We're going to do some scoring here. Now we're going to be doing first some performances, and you're going to want to have the highest total. So we'll look at the different attributes of skills, energy, and charisma. So we'll look here, and I have 2 from this one, 1 from here, and we have 1 here and 1 here. So we have 5, but you might have action cards that are revealed now in this festival section, and this says we'll add 3. So I actually would have 8. If I have the most, I'd get the 8 points as printed on the board. Second most gets 4. Now if you're tied for the most with someone else, you go to the single band member that has the most, and if it's still tied, you go to the band member that has the second most, and so on and so forth. If it's tied all the way down, then you divide the equally amount of scoring to each of the players that are tied, rounding down fractions. Now you'll do that for all 3 of these attributes: skills, energy, and charisma. Then we'll go to the light show. Now you'll look at how many of the different colors you have. Remember, you can only have 1 of each color, but you might have some action cards that are played at the end of the game that will also act as one. So this is a yellow one, for example, so I have 4 different colors. And so if you had the first amount of those, and again, if you had the most, you'd get 8 points, second most, 4 points. If you're tied, the one with the most total number of dragons, and if it's still tied, points are divided evenly, rounding down. Next, we're going to look at the diversity of your band. And you look at the different types of species. This one isn't incredibly diverse. We have 1 species here, 2, 3, 4. So I have 4 different species. And again, 8 for the first place and 4 for the second place. And ties are broken by the number of rare artists such as the Minotaur or the Giant Goblin. In other words, one of the band members that has a species type that is not one of the types that's on the board. Whoever had the more of those would get the tiebreakers. Again, tied, you round down and split the points. Next, we'll go to authenticity. You'll score 8 points if you have a classic rock band, and that is having only bass, the singer, guitar, and drums. Optionally, you can have the piano there, but you must have these 4 and only those 4 Or additionally, you can have a piano. If you have anyone else, you don't get that. Plus, you'll get 8 points if you have only a male-only band or only a female, and those are listed on the cards right in the middle there, like that. If you happen to have all of the same species, again, the species is shown on the bottom left, if your whole entire band is one species, you'll score 12 points. Also keep in mind, you might have other action cards that score you points as well, like this one, the Gypsy Punk, score 1 point for each tour token you have placed in the city of the Eastern March, and it shows you which cities those are. And whoever has the most points is the winner. Ties are broken by the best rock and roll scream. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Trollfest faster than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video. Now, that's the best place to ask them since I'll be notified, but so will Trick or Treat Studios.